My mother was a woman who entered a book. I was the malicious supporting character in this novel, destined for a tragic end. She knew the plot well but fell victim to her own kindness and softness, dying tragically in a fire along with my brother. Witnessing everything, I was taken back and began to tread carefully, scheming at every step. I started to officially enter the sweet and pampered plot of this novel. In the end, I smiled at my biological father and said,
"Father, I greet you on behalf of my mother and brother."
When I was 7, I accidentally found a stack of hidden papers in Susan's study. Curiously, I opened them and found writings that did not exist in this world. But I knew them because Susan often taught me and John these writings. I stumbled through reading them. From then on, I understood everything. Susan came from a world completely different from here. And our world was just a book she had read. I didn't alert anyone and quietly put the papers back. That day, my emotions were in turmoil, and John noticed something was wrong with me.
Holly, what's wrong?
"John, I'm fine."
I never expected that it would be the last time I saw my kind and gentle brother. That afternoon, as usual, I went up the mountain to gather herbs. When I returned home, I saw the entire village engulfed in flames. I rushed into the fire like a madwoman but was forcibly stopped.
"Miss Hysteria, we finally found you."
A silver-haired middle-aged man bowed slightly to me.
"No, how could the plot start so soon? My mother, my brother, and those neighbors."
I was in so much pain that I couldn't speak. Everything before my eyes began to twist and distort. For the first time, I realized that when a person is in extreme pain, they feel numb. The silver-haired man only showed a regretful expression but did nothing.
"Unfortunately, we arrived too late. We couldn't save the lady and the young master."
"How could this be? How could this be?"
In the end, the silver-haired man, who was also my biological father's butler, Albert, had people extinguish the fire. I only found 2 charred bodies. I trembled as I touched them repeatedly, confirming who they were. How painful it must have been to be burned alive. These were my dearest loved ones, and now they were reduced to this. I buried them under the trees on the hillside. Is the plot really so unchangeable? I suppressed the violent emotions in my heart and forced a smile.
"So now, are you going to take me back to the Grand Duke's castle?"
As I spoke, tears fell uncontrollably. It hurt so much. Albert frowned but quickly relaxed.
"Yes, the master is already anxious. I hope Miss can come back with me quickly."
I didn't want to go back, didn't want to be part of the plot. But I had to be strong. The rest of the journey was mine to walk alone.
I sat alone in the carriage, using the excuse of resting my eyes to avoid any inquiries from outsiders. In reality, I was silently recalling all the plot points I had seen at Susan's place. This was originally a sweet and romantic Western court novel. The male lead was the only son of the current emperor. Although he was mischievous from a young age, he would change later on and eventually ascend to the throne. The heroine was my half-sister. She had grown up with the male lead, and they had a marriage contract. Their sweet and tangled relationship spanned hundreds of chapters, overcoming numerous obstacles from various supporting characters before finally being together. And my mother? She was merely a supporting character before the story began. In the plot, she was a poor maid who charmed the Duke of the Empire, bore his child, and shamelessly lived in the Duke's castle. Before the Duke's wife arrived, she died in a fire in her room due to an accident. Susan, my mother, still fell in love with the Duke and became pregnant with his child. Later, she fled to a small village with John and me, but still met the same tragic end as in the plot. In the plot, it was revealed that the heroine's mother had ordered the maid to be burned to death simply because she loved the Duke and this commoner was in her way. After learning this, the heroine shed a few fake tears and lamented, "Sister is so pitiful." Everyone else believed that Susan and I deserved it. In the original plot, I grew up with a reclusive personality, annoying everyone, but I was particularly fond of the male lead. Because of this, I did many foolish things to frame the heroine, but she always tolerated me because I was her sister. In the end, I was killed by the male lead, who comforted the heroine, saying, "She should have died in that fire years ago. You are so kind. Don't blame yourself." Soon, the carriage brought me to the vast wheat fields and the magnificent castle. In the study, I first met my biological father.
Why do you look so timid? Are you really a member of the Augustus family?
It was the first time I saw such a scrutinizing gaze, and I forced a smile.
Are you my father? I've always wanted to see you.
SK, did your mother teach you to be like this? If it weren't for the Grand Seer predicting I really wouldn't have wanted to bring you back. Your mother was kind and naive to the point of being foolish. Don't inherit her foolishness. Don't be an idiot.
I bit my cheek hard and lowered my head, refraining from saying anything inappropriate. My mother was the kindest person in the world. Even if you are my father, you can't say that about her.
Just like a child born of a commoner, truly weak. Albert, take her away.
In an instant, my eyes filled with tears, but I stubbornly turned my head without saying a word. Feeling dejected, I followed Albert through the opulent interior of the castle. A richly dressed lady and a younger girl in fine clothes approached us.
Albert, is this the illegitimate daughter?
Madam, yes.
The young girl peeked out curiously at me. She must be the heroine, Christina. My stepmother scrutinized my face closely.
Truly an eyesore, just like her commoner mother. I don't want to see her often. You know how to arrange her room, right?
With that, she walked away arrogantly. I struggled to suppress the urge to scratch her face. It was her who caused the deaths of Susan and John. But now, I was alone and powerless. I could only endure until I had the strength to seek revenge. My days in the castle were not easy. With my stepmother in control of the household, the servants followed her lead, often whispering and mocking me. I was frequently short of food and clothing, and my room was the most remote and cramped in the entire castle. But I pretended not to notice, silently enduring in my room, because I knew that even if I complained to my biological father, it would be useless.
He wouldn't care about me.
I was truly alone. Every day, I cried secretly, desperately recalling the
Christina, my half-sister, was celebrating her birthday. The castle was adorned with festive decorations, and the servants were bustling about, preparing for the grand occasion.
Stay quietly in your room, and don't disobey the lady's orders.
I was confined to my room by a fierce-looking servant, only able to listen to the lively sounds outside. Even though I had expected this, I still felt a bit down.
When Susan was around, she would always bake a cake for my birthday, and John would prepare gifts for me.
Silently, I counted the time in my head, then suddenly bit the servant's hand hard. Taking advantage of her moment of pain, I quickly ran out, zigzagging through the corridors to shake her off. Carefully avoiding the crowds, I made my way to the center of the woods. Sure enough, I saw a delicate, 5-year-old girl struggling in the water, with no one around to help. Gathering my courage, I jumped into the water to rescue her. She was surprisingly heavy. After much effort, I brought her to the shore. She was gasping for breath, her face flushed.
Whose child are you?
I belong to the Alec family.
I patiently comforted her and helped her walk slowly towards the banquet hall. The hall was brightly lit, and my stepmother stood elegantly with my father in the center, greeting the guests. I looked completely out of place in their world. Seeing me enter, dressed so differently, stepmother's face changed, and she signaled for the servants to take me away.
Father, mother, I saved the Alec family's little daughter from drowning.
With that, most of the guests turned to look at us. For many, it was their first time seeing me, the illegitimate daughter, and whispers filled the hall. The Alec couple's faces changed, and they hurried over. The girl's mother held her, comforting her continuously.
She saved me from the water.
As the girl recounted the story, I became the hero who saved her. Low murmurs echoed in the hall, but the conversation soon shifted.
Look, that's the illegitimate daughter of the Augustus family.
Wow, she's dressed so poorly. Even worse than my servants?
Well, you might not know, but look at who her stepmother is.
I watched as stepmother's face turned pale, and father's expression darkened. They had always had a good reputation, but this incident was a significant embarrassment.
But, Mother, you had the servants watch over me and wouldn't let me come.
The crowd gasped at my words. Though an illegitimate daughter didn't need to be treated well, such treatment was unbecoming of nobility. Stepmother tried to continue her defense, but my plain clothes and frail body silently contradicted her.
Please, she saved our daughter. We owe her a great debt.
With the Alec Marquis and his wife pleading on my behalf, father finally made a decisive statement.
Enough. From now on, Albert will be responsible for Holly's well-being. And you, behave yourself.
As he said the last sentence, father glanced at me, though it was unclear whom he was addressing. Despite my disappointment in father, I still felt a pang of sadness. Stepmother, silenced by father, could only glare at me angrily. I noticed that throughout the event, neither the heroine nor the hero appeared in the hall. Thinking of the original plot, I couldn't help but sigh. Who would have thought that the real culprit behind the girl's predicament was actually the hero's companion?
In the original story, the hero's companion, who was also his study partner and attendant, had an argument with the girl and threw her bracelet into the lake in a fit of anger. The girl, in her distress, jumped in after it, and the companion fled out of fear.
This incident made the companion more mature, and he played a crucial role in advising the hero during several critical moments. The hero, upon learning of the incident, didn't care much and even helped cover it up for his companion. But since he was the protagonist of the book, what did it matter if he made a few youthful mistakes?
As a fellow supporting character, I truly...
From that moment on, my freedom within the castle greatly increased, and the quality of my living conditions improved significantly. I was even allowed to dine at the table with my parents.
You are 8 years old now. It's time for you to start school.
Although they always ignored me, treating me as if I were an outsider, I found a new joy, reading.
Rolls her eyes in displeasure.
I did not argue because I needed to attend the best church school to gain knowledge and, incidentally, escape from here. I took the opportunity to apply for boarding, and stepmother, eager to be rid of me, quickly agreed. The Lancaster kingdom is supported by 3 pillars: the king, the nobility, and the church. Historically, both wealth and knowledge have been tightly controlled by the church and the upper echelons of the nobility. However, I did not expect to face a baptism of fire on my very first day of class.
This is our new student. Please welcome her.
When the teacher introduced me, I was met with a chorus of boos. During the break, groups of children gathered around my desk, laughing.
So, you're the illegitimate daughter of the Augustus family? I heard your mother was a lowly servant, and your bloodline is just as lowly.
Do you think someone like you deserves to be in the same classroom as us?
The innocent yet cruel words of the children reached my ears, and others watched the scene unfold with amusement. I couldn't believe that after leaving that home, I was facing this again. I clenched my fists, feeling at a loss as I looked at everything around me.
Is mocking others the kind of etiquette nobles should have? You are bringing shame to your families.
The entire class fell silent for a moment. I heard others whispering that she was the sister of the girl I had saved before. I remembered that in the original storyline, after her sister's incident, the Marquis and his wife valued their only daughter even more, spoiling her to the point of arrogance. More crucially, this sister, Kate, was one of the early antagonists in the original plot. She always tried to get close to the male protagonist and ultimately faced a grim fate during an adventure with the main characters.
What are you talking about?
Her defense of me brought a warm feeling to my heart. Summoning courage from somewhere, I stood up and pushed him hard. He reacted by angrily lunging at me, and I fought back just as fiercely. The entire class watched in shock as we brawled. Though he was bigger than me, I fought with more determination. Susan had always told me to resist bad people with all my might. In the end, we both ended up battered and bruised. Kate eventually separated us, and the boy glared at me, still cursing under his breath. I glared back, equally defiant. Neither of us reported the incident to the teacher. After this event, fewer people dared to speak ill of me in my presence. Rumors still swirled around the campus, though they wouldn't confront me directly, they isolated and ignored me. Whenever I walked by, no matter what they were talking about, they would immediately stop. If I tried to speak to them, they pretended not to hear. No one informed me about any group activities. The teachers completely ignored the undercurrents among the students, acting as if they didn't see anything. I thought about my character in the original plot. After Susan and John met their tragic ends, she still had to face such malice. Was she as lost and helpless as I am now? So, how could anyone blame her for being aloof in the story? Fortunately, I still had Kate as a friend.
It's so unfair. Why do they treat you like this?
She was proud yet kind, and she was angry about the cold shoulder I received, often arguing with others on my behalf.
If you hang out with a commoner, aren't you afraid of catching the maid's stench?
Tears welled up in Kate's eyes, and I felt downhearted too, but I tried to cheer up and wiped her tears away. They're just ignorant kids. I repeated these words to comfort myself, to ease my pain, and to make myself stronger. I often asked myself, was it my fault to be born into a poor family? Was it my fault to be born an illegitimate daughter? These unanswered questions often kept me up at night. I spent all my free time studying, and my grades improved significantly. From books, I also learned more knowledge and gradually tried to reconcile with myself. A group of kids found me boring and soon turned their attention to other things. My reputation slowly shifted from extremely poor to average. I finally made 2 or 3 friends, though few, they lifted my spirits considerably. My sister and the Crown Prince were now the famous, rumored couple in our grade, and their gossip spread throughout the school. Today, the Crown Prince brought breakfast for my sister, tomorrow, they had a quarrel. They bickered every day, and since they weren't in the same grade, the heroine mostly ignored me. I could only work harder, as studying was my only weapon at this stage. When I met my sister again, it was during our graduation exams from elementary to middle school. I performed exceptionally well, ranking first in every aspect, shocking everyone around me. They looked at me with strange and surprised eyes. After all, my grades had always been top-notch, but never the first. Today, my sister came to find me for the first time.
Sister, are you going home today? Susan misses you and has prepared a table full of dishes.
I raised an eyebrow and replied. Sister, what are you talking about? When has Susan ever waited for me to eat together? After years of self-persuasion, I had become much more confident, and my words had become sharper. Christina seemed stunned by my directness. The Crown Prince happened to walk by, looking at me impatiently.
You are an illegitimate daughter. Chris talking to you is already a favor. Don't you know that?
Oh, stop saying that. She's my sister after all.
I had no interest in watching this couple's lovey-dovey act and turned to leave. Kate, who had been silent, finally spoke in a low, angry voice after we walked some distance away.
Is that the Crown Prince who helped cover up my sister's drowning incident?
I nodded, signaling her to stay calm. There would always be a chance for revenge, for both her and me. Thinking back now, did Kate really revolve around the Crown Prince all the time because she loved him? Was her demise by the beast's mouth really an accident? After lunch, as usual, I ventured into the depths of the school forest to feed the cats. A month ago, I found a litter of injured kittens there and had been painstakingly taking care of them, often bringing various foods to feed them. On this day, I chose the best angle, dressed myself up with great care, and then squatted down to feed the cats. From a distance, I heard footsteps approaching. I looked in the direction of the sound and saw a young man in white, with a gentle face, looking at me in surprise. Here he comes. The great prophet, the future head of the Royal Academy of Sciences. The young leader of the church, Casey.
Who are you?
In the original text, this was Casey's little-known resting place. A few years later, the heroine would accidentally wander here, be discovered by Casey, and the two would have a delightful conversation, becoming friends despite their age difference. From his occasional words, the heroine would learn that I was prophesied to be the one who would bring down the kingdom, ultimately aiding the male lead in ending my life. Moreover, Casey's favorite trait in the heroine was her innocence and naivety.
I'm Casey. And you are?
Oh my goodness. It's you.
I looked at him with admiration. Casey clearly enjoyed my gaze, and from then on, it was I who had delightful conversations with him.
The real you is the one talking to me now, not the one in the prophecy, right?
Yes, exactly.
As expected of the spiritual mentor character in the book, even though his role ended early. The church was powerful, demanding everyone to believe and follow its rules, but Casey had many different ideas. He would read forbidden books and believed that the ideas of freedom and equality in those books were worth promoting, making him an outlier.
I believe that people have the inherent rights to survival, freedom, the pursuit of happiness and property.
Casey admired me even more, and we agreed on the time for our next meeting. On the way back, I was in high spirits and couldn't help but hum a tune, but then I heard a mocking laugh from the side. Turning my head, I saw a man with devilishly handsome looks leaning against a tree, watching me.
Didn't expect Miss Holly to be so good at deceiving men, huh?
That outfit. It was Sapphire, the hostage sent from the Z country. In the original book, he didn't have much of a role, only returning to his homeland as an adult to ascend the throne.
What are you talking about? I don't understand.
Sapphire walked over, looking down at me.
Your little tricks might fool Casey, but not me.
I quickly thought of many things and then spoke calmly.
Sapphire, let's make a deal.
I took a step forward and lightly brushed his shoulder.
What?
You help me become the Duke's heir. And I will help you return to your country and ascend the throne.
Since Sapphire and I secretly formed an alliance, he began helping me get involved in various small guild organizations, funding talented but impoverished students, and building connections. I used the plot of the novel to give him advice. Meanwhile, due to my excellent grades and gentle demeanor, the people around me gradually grew up, and no one openly showed their malice like children anymore. Finally, I stumbled my way to adulthood, and the graduation ceremony arrived. As the best school in the empire, the emperor and a host of nobles and ministers would attend the graduation ceremony. At the dining table, father uncharacteristically inquired about sister's academic performance.
How are your studies progressing, dear?
My studies are going quite well, father.
Stepmother also timely added a few words of praise for sister.
Yes, she's doing exceptionally well. We're so proud of her.
I rarely talked about my school life at home, and for some reason, the heroine never mentioned my grades and performance either. Father didn't even bring me up, as if I were invisible. I lowered my head and ate in silence. I had experienced this scene too many times and was long used to it. But what they didn't know was that, as one of the outstanding student representatives, I was eligible to go on stage to receive an award. On the day of the ceremony, with salutes firing, I ascended the stage in new clothes, catching a glimpse of father's surprised expression and stepmother's shocked look. TSK, if looks could kill, stepmother would have killed me many times over. The emperor, who had some blood relation with stepmother, saw me and spoke with authority, without showing any emotion.
Congratulations, outstanding graduate. You are about to graduate from here.
I thought nonchalantly, this is the person who condoned stepmother in harming my mother. But I put on a respectful smile.
Hello, Your Majesty. I hope this prize money can be used elsewhere, with your permission.
Oh? Let's hear it.
I hope to use this money to establish the Royal Academy of Sciences.
I could feel the air around the emperor suddenly chill. His face turned stern, but constrained by the public setting, he just gritted his teeth.
This is your prize money. You can do with it as you wish.
I knew saying such things publicly might displease the emperor, but it could earn me public praise. After the ceremony, stepmother was reluctantly pulled away by father to exchange pleasantries with the emperor. Sister ran over, her face full of shock.
Sister, what did you just say at the ceremony? And you're an outstanding representative?
She had been too busy breaking up and reconciling with the crown prince and having chance encounters with male leads to keep track of me, the illegitimate daughter.
Sister, that's my prize money. I'm just more interested in science. It shouldn't be a problem, right?
But the church.
The crown prince appeared at this moment, looking at me with malice, and pulled Christina into his arms.
Why do you care about this child? I'm telling you, father is furious. Just wait and see what happens to her.
How can you talk like that? You're so annoying.
I pursed my lips, not wanting to say more to them, and the twists and turns in the story began as the crown prince came of age. The emperor issued the amnesty decree to consolidate power, intending to strengthen the church's political influence. This decree allowed church personnel to hold government positions and adjudicate matters privately. The decree caused an uproar across the nation. The public, long suffering under church despotism, opposed it vehemently. 3 out of the 10 archbishops publicly refused to accept it, led by Casey. In the original plot, Casey secretly admired the heroine's pure and kind nature. The heroine claimed to stand by Casey's side but privately sought him out to ease the situation. Through her mediation, Casey ultimately relented. As a result, the heroine earned the emperor's praise and admiration. The Alec family, originally the staunchest opponents of the church, had fallen into decline due to the loss of their heir. Interestingly, Casey never appeared in the story again after this. Was it an accident, or did the emperor have him eliminated? I mobilized all my connections and covert agents, forming an alliance with the Alec family, and exaggerated the severity of the situation. I sought out Casey and earnestly told him,
"Never give up on your ideals. I will always support you."
Casey was moved and nodded repeatedly. With the encouragement of a true friend, Casey's resolve strengthened, and he became even more opposed to the church. Seeing the public outcry reach its peak, I casually mentioned the situation at the dinner table, sighing.
If someone could turn this situation around now, they would likely earn great acclaim.
Sister, if the situation is so critical and not handled properly.
Precisely because it's difficult, handling it well would bring significant merit.
I continued to offer a few more words of persuasion. Stepmother glared at me unceremoniously.
Is this something you should be discussing?
I fell silent. A few days later, news spread that the Crown Prince had made a series of blunders, directly ordering the arrest and imprisonment of all demonstrators. But he didn't realize that suppressing dissent would only cause public discourse to boil over like scalding water. The emperor may not have been a perfect ruler, but his love for the male protagonist was genuine. He shielded the male protagonist from all controversy and refrained from ordering his punishment. This only fueled the public's anger. In the novel, the male protagonist was originally portrayed as somewhat impulsive and rebellious, maturing only after experiencing life-and-death situations with the heroine. The current male protagonist. I stood on the city tower, arms crossed, quietly watching the demonstration below. Sapphire stood beside me, grinning.
Isn't this enough?
No, there's still one final step.
At the peak of the parade, I appeared at the forefront, shouting.
Although I am of noble birth, I agree with your ideals. Everyone is born with the right to freedom, so why should the church restrict us?
The crowd's cheers grew louder and louder. Next to me, Casey was moved to tears.
Your words are so inspiring.
The knights looked on, their faces turning pale. Due to my status, they didn't dare to arrest me directly. When I returned home that day, the house was empty except for Albert, who was waiting in the hall.
Miss, the Duke has asked you to go to the study.
Over the years, Father and I had hardly spoken, and he rarely looked me in the eye. I had long since grown cold towards him. I nodded.
It seems he is here to settle accounts with me.
In the study, for the first time, Father looked at me seriously.
Tell me, why did you do this? Do you really believe in the same things as those commoners?
Calmly, I took out a document and handed it to Father.
Please take a look.
It wasn't much, just a story where the heroine accidentally saved the male supporting character, a prince from the S-Kingdom, who remained infatuated with her and pursued her relentlessly, often bickering with the male lead. At first glance, there was nothing wrong with it. However, the Emperor had recently shown a desire to form an alliance with the S-Kingdom, hoping to use foreign power to cleanse the internal opposition. In the original plot, the Emperor made secret contacts and eventually succeeded. Father frowned deeply as he read the document. He looked up.
What do you mean?
I've handed you the evidence on a silver platter. In these turbulent times for the kingdom, as someone with a legitimate claim to the throne, do you really have no thoughts about it?
The Emperor and my father were political allies, with the old noble families supporting the royal power and the church. That's why Father agreed to marry my stepmother, who was related to the Emperor. The Emperor merely saw my brother, Susan, and me as insignificant. He was the real support behind my stepmother, the biggest obstacle on my path to revenge.
Now the emperor is weak, and the crown prince is useless. With such strong public support, and me siding with the people. Father, you are the head of the royal knights. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So, why can't the Augustus family take the throne instead?
Father pondered for a long time. Although I spoke confidently, my heart was racing. This was a make-or-break moment. No one could have imagined that this small conversation in a tiny room would set the stage for the upheaval of the dynasty.
From the first time I saw you, Father smiled at me for the first time, showing a look of admiration. I knew you were my true daughter.
Within a week, Father, accompanied by the royal knights, stormed into a gathering of numerous vassals and presented evidence of the emperor's collusion with the S country. The S country and our nation share many overlapping products, and if they were to form an alliance, many noble industries would suffer. The emperor's face turned ashen, his hands trembling as he looked at father in disbelief.
Who do you think you are? Just a servant of the royal family. How dare you? This is treason! You traitor!
The heroine, standing beside the crown prince, looked as if she might collapse, her eyes brimming with tears as she gazed at father. However, many of the nobles present stood by father's side, silently staring at the emperor. Both the commoners and the nobility had grown increasingly dissatisfied with the emperor. The tide had turned. The emperor, in his fury, spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. The crown prince continued to rant, while the heroine wept incessantly, crying.
How could this happen?
Fortunately, stepmother was left in the castle, who knows what she might have done otherwise. I watched this farce coldly, thinking of the ashes I once held, feeling a surge of satisfaction. In the prison, I made a special visit to see the heroine, now a prisoner due to her status as the crown prince's fiancée, and smiled.
Hello, my dear sister.
Christina, deprived of proper clothing and food in the prison, could no longer maintain her delicate appearance and screamed in a state of near madness.
It's you're the devil. You bewitched father.
Do you truly not understand? In this game of power, if you don't participate, there's only one path left. And you and your fiancé are merely the losers in this game. This isn't some childish love game.
Just like how Susan, John, and the countless poor people were not merely background characters in your story. If I had lost today, I would have simply admitted my defeat. With that, I ignored Christina's frantic screams and turned to leave. You are just my first target. The next time I saw stepmother was in the room where she was confined. Father, after all, cared about his reputation and didn't kill her outright, merely imprisoned her. Stepmother seemed to have aged many years, no longer the radiant figure she once was, now haggard and hollow-eyed, glaring at me with hatred.
You little wretch! I should have ended you the day you entered this house. It's all your fault, otherwise my Chris wouldn't have.
She broke down in tears as she spoke. This pitiful, foolish, and hateful woman. I lifted her chin with my hand and spoke softly.
Is your life's creed only about my father? Why can't you admit that he only loves power and never loved you? Didn't father tacitly approve of sister's fate?
As if her mask had been torn away, stepmother's tears flowed in anger.
No, that's impossible.
Don't worry, I won't harm you.
At the door, I instructed the attendant.
Make sure to give her medicine regularly and in precise amounts every day, ensuring she suffers immensely but cannot actually pass away. Report any issues directly to me. If she tries to end her own life, tell her that if she does, I will immediately harm my sister to accompany her in death.
I want her to live in a state of perpetual torment. Later, I ordered the crown prince and the emperor to be confined. Finally, on the day my father was crowned emperor, the sky was clear. He ascended the high platform, draped in a cloak and wearing a crown. I followed closely behind him.
Let us welcome the jewel of the empire, the heir of the golden rose, Miss Hysteria.
I walked slowly past the crowd that once mocked me, watching them bow before me. Those who once ignored and isolated me now could only smile obsequiously. The little girl had finally grown up. I was no longer the illegitimate daughter or the low-born child of commoners, but the legitimate heir of the empire. Just when everything seemed to be going smoothly, a sudden change occurred.
It has come to my attention that the Z Kingdom wishes to form an alliance with our nation and has requested a princess in marriage. Coincidentally, my daughter has reached a suitable age for marriage. Therefore, I hereby declare, Miss Hysteria is to be conferred the title of princess and will marry the prince of the Z Kingdom immediately.
I was shocked by father's unexpected move. A cunning strategy. He did not need an heir with too much ambition, as it would be detrimental to his control. What a plan! Under the sunlight, father smiled faintly at me. Sapphire stepped out from the crowd and extended his hand to me.
Please, my future queen.
I suppressed my anger. I should have seen this coming. My wretched father would never keep his promises. He had conspired with Sapphire to trap me. And by making such an announcement, he must have been fully prepared.
Miss, we all understand your dedication to the well-being of the people. Please rest assured and marry.
Many ministers and nobles around began to discuss, placing the mantle of righteousness upon me. Bastard! I glared at Sapphire, who leaned in and whispered.
Don't look at me like that, Mississippi. You should know, betrayal is the true essence of alliances.
I was powerless to resist. If I refused, all my previous efforts would be in vain, and my reputation would plummet. I could only grudgingly follow Sapphire onto the ship and leave. In the Z Kingdom's palace, I lay on a lounge chair reading a book, feeling utterly drained. Sapphire, dressed in red, leaned charmingly against the railing.
My dear wife, why do you not seem sad at all?
I haven't even complained about your near slip-up during the coronation ceremony.
It appeared that I was the princess who had been disgracefully expelled from the kingdom. But, who was the hunter, and who was the prey? Father had declared his intention to abolish the church ideology, promote freedom and equality, and grant power to the people. However, he was deeply entangled with the emperor, and after taking the throne, he did not fulfill his previous promises. I knew him well. He was a highly authoritarian man, obsessed with power. How could such a person truly return power to the people? Thus, opposition voices began to emerge, starting with the Royal Academy of Sciences. Before he could address it, the dissent grew louder. I had spent over a decade building my influence, and the hidden agents I left behind continued to stir public opinion. Among the nobility, the Alec family was the first to openly oppose him. Being exiled by father allowed me to completely sever ties with him and the old noble powers. Coupled with my previously accumulated good reputation and benevolent actions, many nobles began to contact me privately. Of course, I promised to delegate more power to the parliament. This was an incredibly tempting offer. Finally, everything was ready. With part of the Z country's army and mercenaries, Holly prepared to return to the Lancaster kingdom under the invitation of the nobles.
If I remember correctly, the navy in the Lancaster kingdom is under the jurisdiction of the Alec family.
She had already communicated with Kate, promising her that she would become the first female prime minister of the new dynasty. The Z country's army landed in the Lancaster kingdom with hardly any resistance. Holly's father, in the palace, anxiously summoned his ministers to resist. But he couldn't gather many people, and the public's morale was low.
Holly is the only rightful heir to the throne.
Amid the cheers of "Queen" from the people, Holly arrived at the palace gates in armor.
Father, as your daughter, I cannot watch you make mistake after mistake. As the first in line to the Augustus family, and as the crown princess of Z country, I represent the will of the people and request you to abdicate.
Behind her were the shouts of the people. The reputation and credentials she had accumulated over the years finally came into play at this moment. Perhaps knowing that his time was up, the palace gates slowly opened, and Morton Augustus stood behind them, looking at Holly with a complex expression, as if seeing her for the first time.
Holly, Miss Holly, the Emperor wishes to see you alone.
Holly raised her head to stop others from advising her and walked into the palace where her father was.
Father, I bring greetings from Mother and John.
Her father's eyes flickered, and he sat alone at the edge of the long table. Holly suddenly realized that he had aged.
What do you want? Do you want to be empress?
Not entirely. I want to truly return power to the people, to end this cursed monarchy, and to show people what freedom and equality mean.
Her father's eyes widened in shock, and he slammed his hand on the table.
Do you know what that means? You are betraying your class.
Perhaps.
Holly hadn't thought about her mother for a long time. Her face seemed to be fading from her memory. Once, she had asked her mother why she separated from father.
It's not just the difference in status, but also the difference in worldview. I could never understand his disregard for human life, and he could never understand my belief in freedom and equality, so I decided to leave him.
Holly's mother couldn't accept the hierarchical system of this world, couldn't accept that some people were born noble while others were born lowly.
People are born free and equal. It is not granted by the Pope or the Emperor, but a right inherent to all. I came from a world without emperors where knowledge could flow freely. People did not fear being beaten by nobles, and everyone believed in freedom and equality. Women could also be leaders.
Holly longed for that. She wanted to realize the world her mother once lived in. She had read the papers her mother left her countless times, which told her that in the distant future, humanity would achieve communism.
Although I can't fully understand it all, it won't stop me from trying.
Father panted heavily, his face filled with disbelief.
You won't achieve it. You have no idea how many obstacles you'll face.
I bowed my head in thought for a moment, then resolutely said,
So what? I believe there will be others who follow.
Father sighed, lowering his head helplessly, and said in a broken, soft voice,
You really are like your mother. Your grandfather was a very weak man. Although he was the legitimate heir, he was often ridiculed and mocked by others, yet he only responded with a forced smile and never retorted. From a young age, I vowed never to be like him. I was determined to make our family flourish, to make everyone bow down to me.
His rambling made him seem like a true old man. I believe that in the distant past, the young man who had just inherited the title of Duke genuinely liked that maid who was different from everyone else. That's why he had me brought back, and why stepmother was jealous of my mother. But there was too much between them. Reality is not a fairy tale. In the end, it could only lead to tragedy.
Just as I was destined to stand against father. Not only because he ignored stepmother's actions that led to mother's demise, but also because we were fated to belong to different camps.
In the end, I simply imprisoned father. A man who had pursued power all his life, now imprisoned, who knows how he felt. I heard that in the prison, stepmother and heroine kept shouting incessantly. I waved my hand and had them dealt with directly. I smoothly ascended to the throne, and amidst the cheers of the crowd, I wore the crown, becoming the first empress in the history of the Lancaster kingdom. On the day Sapphire was leaving, he looked at me with that same playful smile.
My dear Empress, I've helped you so much. Don't you have any reward for me?
Helping you gain the throne doesn't count, I replied with a smile.
Thinking of everything we had been through together, in the end, I just hugged him.
Goodbye.
My friend, may we each fulfill our responsibilities on our respective stages. That night, I had a dream. In the dream, I returned to the days when I was 7, living with Mother and John. Life was peaceful and serene. The small mountain village was truly the happiest time of my life. Mother looked at me with gentle kindness, and with tears in my eyes, I stammered.
Mom, I miss you so much.
You're all grown up now, still so fond of crying.
Mom, am I your pride?
You have always been my pride.
Historical records of the Lancaster Kingdom. After the bloodless revolution in the year XX, Miss Hysteria I became the emperor. The political system of Lancaster transitioned from a feudal monarchy to a constitutional monarchy, vigorously promoting the ideas of freedom and equality and natural human rights proposed by XX thinkers, leading to the gradual decline of church power. In the year XX, the XX theory emerged, and communist rhetoric began to appear in X continent. The XX revolution, starting with prisoners seizing the prison, ultimately failed. However, years later, the XX revolution succeeded under the push of the masses, establishing the world's first ex-socialist state. Miss Hysteria Augustus, the first female emperor of the Lancaster Kingdom, vigorously promoted various equality ideologies, significantly improved the economy and people's livelihood, and elevated the status of women during her reign. She delegated decision-making power to the parliament, reducing the power of the monarchy. From her reign onwards,
The Duke and the Maid.
1.
As the heir to the Augustus family, Morton had been feeling rather troubled lately.
Next year, I come of age, and I must choose a fiancé.
Yet, he found himself constantly looking forward to seeing a young maid. The first time he saw her was on a night when the moon was bright and the stars were sparse. Not wanting to disturb anyone, he sneaked out to find something to eat.
What are you doing here, sneaking around the kitchen?
I was just looking for some food. Please don't tell anyone.
During their conversation, the maid didn't recognize who he was at all. He thought she might be playing some kind of game, but she left an impression on him. He learned her name was Selina.
It's all right, Selina. I won't tell.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Since then, for some reason, he kept seeing the maid around the castle, and sometimes they would chat. He found this maid interesting. She always had unique perspectives and sometimes even said things that were quite bold. In these encounters, the hearts of the young man and woman gradually drew closer.
2.
At that time, his grandmother was still alive. She favored her youngest son and always neglected her eldest son, Morton's father. Their family lived in a smaller house within the castle. His father was weak and unfaithful, having numerous affairs outside. His mother, coming from a humble background, couldn't control his father and would constantly nag Morton. From a young age, he knew he had to work hard to escape this awkward situation. So, when he realized he had feelings for the maid, he revealed his true identity and said directly,
I will never be with a commoner.
The maid looked utterly shocked and disbelieving. However, fate had other plans. One day, while hunting, he was attacked and, in his panic, fell off a cliff. When he woke up, he was in a thatched hut and learned that the maid had saved him. They tacitly avoided mentioning their previous argument.
Selina, thank you for saving me.
It was nothing. I'm just glad you're safe.
During that time, Morton often found himself staring at Selina's face. She was so ordinary, yet she captivated his heart. They lived a peaceful life for a while.
3.
Dreams always have a way of shattering. The Duke's guards found him and took him back. His mother seemed to have noticed something and called him into her room to scold him.
Morton, a noble lady has taken a liking to you at the last banquet and wants to marry you. She is even a distant relative of the emperor, and marrying her would bring significant advantages.
Moreover, his uncle was involved in the recent incident. He pondered for many days. He knew that the young emperor also had a hand in this, wanting the Duke's castle to firmly support him.
In this world, there are always things more important than love, aren't there?
Morton went to the maid and told her he was getting married.
Selina, I'm getting married. If you're willing, you could become my companion.
No, Morton, I can't. I won't be just a companion.
He returned, angry, thinking she was ungrateful. Later, the maid ran away and disappeared.
4.
He married the noble lady and, through his own schemes, successfully inherited the title of Duke. He even had a child. Yet, he could never forget the maid and sent people to look for her. To his surprise, his wife found out about this.
What is this? You're still looking for that maid?
It's not what you think.
When they finally found her, all that was left was the maid's daughter. He told himself that it was only because of the prophecy of the great seer that he took the girl in.
This child, she doesn't resemble her mother at all, but looks more like me.
He didn't like seeing the girl because every meeting left him feeling down for a long time. He poured all his energy into pursuing power, as if trying to prove something.
5.
When he ascended to the throne and considered how to deal with his daughter, his subordinates offered many cruel suggestions. He hesitated.
This is Selena's only child. I can't harm her. I'll find her a husband and marry her off.
In truth, he hadn't thought about the maid for many years. Many years later, when Morton was alone, locked in a room, and everything was quiet, a wave of emotion finally washed over him. He often dreamed.
In my dreams, I am just a poor farmer. Selena is my wife, and we have a child. We live a happy and content life.
He finally